Hey, it's me again. I apologize for the interruption. We were in the middle of talking about the Ziomek and Rayfeld 2008 article, and we had just finished discussing the pros and cons of using manual signs versus using PECs. And so now we're going to go ahead and start talking about the study. And as we were talking about before, the study wanted to compare the two to see which one would be acquired more quickly and which one would be more effective for individuals using either manual sign or PECs. So the purpose of the present study was to compare the acquisition and generalization across settings and communicative partners of MANs for preferred items and MANs for items needed to complete a chained task for manual sign versus PECs. In addition, they compared the degree to which untrained text and interverbals in each communication modality would emerge following the training in each modality. So they used 3 participants with intellectual disabilities who had low verbal skills. And the 2 settings were a classroom for sessions to teach MANs for preferred items, and then the MANs under the transitive CEO control were taught in the kitchen at the facility. So just a little background on the different types. So you have an unconditioned EO, and then you have a transitive conditioned establishing operation. And basically with an unconditioned EO, the item is already motivating for the individual, depending on the circumstances, depending that there's no satiation in place, and you have the right amount of deprivation. But typically an unconditioned EO might be something like food, water, shelter, or a highly preferred item, so it's something that they want to play with, like their toy. But then a transitive conditioned establishing operation is they may have not previously had a motivating operation or establishing operation in place for that item, but you set up a specific chain task so that all of a sudden that item's missing and now they do have a need for it. So let's say, for example, I have my breakfast and I just give the kid the bowl of oatmeal and I don't give them any spoon. I've already set up then that opportunity for them to say, oh, well, I need a spoon, and then now I can give them the spoon, and I have set up a way for them to request the spoon. And so what they did in the article is they used an alternating treatments design to compare the total number of training blocks and the total amount of training time to teach MANs for preferred items using manual sign and PECs. And then they conducted a raised assessment, which is a reinforcer assessment that typically you administer to caregivers. And this reinforcer assessment was created by Fisher, Piazza, Bowman, and Amory in 1996. And you can find this raised assessment online in PDF form for free. And some of the questions on the assessment include things like some children really enjoy looking at things as a mirror, bright light, shiny objects, spinning objects. What are some of the things that you think this individual is most likely to watch? Another question could be some children really enjoy sounds, such as listening to a car, whistles, beeps, sirens, clapping, etc. What are some things that this individual might like listening to? And they kind of go through all of the different sensory modalities, and then they just ask different questions about preferred items. So it is an indirect assessment, an indirect preference assessment, essentially, to easily gain information about a person's likes or dislikes. And so what they did after they conducted the raise, they conducted a baseline session where they assessed the child's manding skills, and no feedback or prompts were provided. And they did this for both modalities. So they did this for the manual sign and they also did this for the PECs. And then they did generalization probes in the kitchen with a different person. PECS training, kind of how we described before, is they first taught the child how to hand over a picture. And typically in PECS training, you'll start with a picture of something that's highly motivating and have it next to a picture of something that's not motivating at all. And you teach them how to discriminate between the two pictures and teach them how to hand over the highly motivating picture in order to gain access to the highly motivating item. And then the second part of the PECS training, they had them actually go and seek out the book. And this is important when you're doing PECS training, because you don't want to just teach somebody how to request with something they have directly in front of them, because what if their book is missing? They're going to need that skill to be able to go and find the book and then hand over the item based on finding it out of the book. And then they taught MANS under the transitive CEO control to Louis only. And I forgot to mention, prior to the MAN training, they also did testing for tacks and interverbals. So they wanted to see if tacks and interverbals would emerge after MAN training alone. So once I teach you how to ask for a drink, either using PECS or manual sign, are you now able to say that this is a drink? And if I say, what is something that what is something that's liquid, they might be able to say drink. Or tell me something that's clear, they might be able to say water. So with some of the interverbal test probes, they did tell me something that is white, and they had to answer milk, or they said name something you mix with, and they had to say whisk. So overall, the study did suggest that PECS are acquired more easily than manual sign, and several reasons for this could be that PECS served as a discriminative stimulus, and so they might see the PEC, and that's an SD for requesting the item, so they may not necessarily have the establishing operation for the item, but there's an SD in place. So that's something to kind of look at when you are doing training with PECS, to make sure that they're really wanting the item, they just haven't learned that the book serves as a discriminative stimulus, or an SD. And then they, following mastery of MANS for preferred item using PECS, Louis did meet criterion for the emergence of untrained tacks, and Robin met criterion for the emergence of untrained interverbals. So future research could explore derived relations and untrained emergence of tacks and interverbals with MAN training. Since we did have inconsistent results, it'd be something to look at in the future. So that is the end of our lecture for part 4. Have a great day.